Welcome to Le Weekend, your essential roundup of French news on culture, business, the economy, and current affairs. We bring you a convenient way to catch up on the stories from the past week in France, plus an additional focus feature blending reportage and cultural context. You'll find a seamless recap of the week's most important headlines without losing any content from our previous daily format, perfect for those who want to catch up in just one episode. Le Weekend is designed to keep you informed and engaged with a lighter touch at the end. Let's dive in. Heavy security was deployed around the city of Evian for the G7 summit, directly inspired by the Paris 2024 Olympic Games experience. In total, 16,000 law enforcement officers secured the G7 summit in eastern France from June 15th to 17th for a cost that is still not assessed, according to official sources, as reported by Le Monde. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to impose a 100% tariff on French wine if France does not eliminate its digital service tax levied on technology companies, according to statements published in the New York Post, as reported by Le Figaro. Anti-obesity centers prepared for a wave of new patients as two drugs are now covered by French health insurance. Requests for consultations at specialized centers have surged ahead of June 15th when Wegovy and Mounjaro started being reimbursed by Social Security under strict conditions, as reported by Le Monde. The headlines on Tuesday, June 16th. France's central bank, Banque de France, now expects GDP growth in 2026 to be only 0.5%. That's a decrease of 0.4 percentage points compared to its last projections in March. Hit by a fall in exports and the oil shock, activity is expected to progress only slightly this year before picking up again in the following years, as reported by Le Figaro. French intelligence is distancing itself from the American company Palantir, co-founded by a close associate of Donald Trump. The DGSI will ultimately use the French startup CHAP's vision for data analysis, but its deployment is not expected to take place before 2027, as reported by France Info. France will invest a further 655 million euros to accelerate the development of AI. On the eve of the opening of the Vivatech trade fair dedicated to new technologies in Paris, Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu announced an additional investment of 655 million euros to, in particular, strengthen infrastructure, research, businesses, and industrial sectors to support French technological sovereignty and modernize public services, as reported by France 24. In Paris, street artist JR's La Caverne du Pont-Neuf is finally open to the public after repairs. The temporary art installation that was damaged by bad weather has now been completely repaired, and the structure is now open to visitors on the Pont-Neuf until June 28th, as reported by France 24. The headlines on Wednesday, June 17th. U.S. President Donald Trump was welcomed at the Château de Versailles on Wednesday evening for a grand reception with President Emmanuel Macron as France marks the 250th anniversary of the independence of the United States in the place where the Treaty of Independence was signed, as reported by RFI. Chinese ultra-low-cost fashion giant Shein's first permanent brick-and-mortar store comes to an end. Less than 3 years after buying the Parisian department store from Galeries Lafayette Group and notably bringing in Shein to the physical store, Frédéric Merlin decided to sell it back to its managers at a loss, as reported by Le Figaro. France is ramping up the fight against tiger mosquitoes after record outbreaks. The country is bracing for another summer of dengue and other diseases risk as climate change helps the disease-carrying tiger mosquito spread north and authorities test new ways to curb its advance, as reported by RFI. France readies for a heat wave with canal swimming now allowed in Paris. Temperatures were set to reach 36 or 37 degrees in some areas on Wednesday and then peak to 40 degrees in some regions on Sunday, just as the country celebrates summer solstice with its annual nationwide music festival La Fête de la Musique, as reported by Le Monde. The headlines on Thursday, June 18th. France has shut down clandestine so-called Chinese police stations operating in its territory. Since early 2026, French counterintelligence services have dismantled 9 clandestine structures operating in France under the direction of China's Ministry of Public Security. The sites were notably used to track down dissidents, as reported by Le Monde. A judicial investigation was opened against former French Prime Minister Édouard Philippe, now mayor of Le Havre, and one of his deputy mayors on charges including misappropriation of public funds, favoritism, and conflict of interest after a senior civil servant filed a complaint as a plaintiff in the case, as reported by Le Monde. The intense heat in France is forcing several cities to cancel the traditional Fête de la Musique music festival on June 21st, as high temperatures of around 40 degrees centigrade, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, are expected on Sunday. Weather conditions are disrupting the most popular musical event of the year. Free and open to all music genres since 1982, the Fête de la Musique offers an open-air stage for many amateur and professional artists, as reported by France 24. The headlines on Friday, June 19th. Air France is replacing its drinks menu for French brands in business and first class and its lounges, with a selection including Maison Patrick Fond juices and Maison Vitamont lemonade. One exception remains, Coca-Cola, as reported by Le Figaro. French agency Centre for National Monuments has been excluded from the management of Mont Saint-Michel. Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu announced a reform aimed at transferring governance of the site solely to the public institution Mont Saint-Michel. The decision has raised serious concerns about the future of funding for French heritage, as reported by Les Echos. France detained a man suspected of spying on a drone factory for Russia. A 48-year-old Belarus-born man allegedly targeted the Delair factory near Toulouse in southwestern France. The site was attacked with Molotov cocktails the day before his arrest, but the devices failed to explode, although it remains unclear whether the two incidents are linked, as reported by Le Monde. You are listening to Le Weekend. And now that you're all caught up with the news from the past week, it's time for our focus story. Today we look at why the iconic Abbey of Mont Saint-Michel made the news this week. Mont Saint-Michel is by any measure one of the most extraordinary places on earth. rising from the tidal flats of the Normandy coast like a mirage made of granite and centuries of faith, Mont Saint-Michel has spent more than 1,300 years accumulating myths, wars, and now bureaucratic quarrels. The latest chapter in its improbable history unfolded this week when the French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu announced a sweeping reform of how the site is governed, sidelining the Centre des Monuments Nationaux, the state body that had managed the abbey for decades, in favor of a single unified authority. The move has delighted Norman elected officials, but infuriated trade unions in equal measure. To understand why this matters, we have to understand what the place is, what it means, and what it has survived.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Imagine being in the boardroom with the world's most influential C-suite executives, exploring big questions about the economy, AI, and hybrid work. Welcome to C-Suite Perspectives, hosted by Steve Odland, President and CEO of the Conference Board, the ultimate podcast for professionals seeking the truth beyond trending headlines. Cut through the noise and dive into data-driven discussions, unbiased, nonpartisan, and straight from the top. Listen to C-Suite Perspectives and harness the power of trusted insights for what's ahead.
The history of Mont Saint-Michel begins, as so many medieval tales do, with a vision. In the year 708, Aubert, Bishop of Avranches, received a vision in which the archangel Michael appeared to him 3 times, instructing him to build a sanctuary on a rock island, then known as Menton, rising from the tidal bay between Normandy and Brittany. According to legend, Aubert hesitated. The archangel, apparently not accustomed to being ignored, pressed his finger into the bishop's skull with such force that it burned a hole, a relic still visible today at the Basilica of Saint-Gervais in Avranches, with a perfectly round perforation that skeptics prefer to explain as evidence of prehistoric trepanation. Whether or not one takes the divine origin story at face value, the practical result was the same. A small chapel was built, consecrated in October 709, and named Mont Saint-Michel au péril de la mer, St. Michael's Mount in peril of the sea. The name alone tells you everything about the relationship between this place and its natural setting. In 1966, Duke Richard I of Normandy installed a community of Benedictine monks on the Mount, and construction of the Romanesque Abbey Church began in earnest around 1023. What followed over the next 5 centuries was one of the most audacious building projects in the history of European architecture, working on a granite rock barely a kilometer from the mainland, on terrain where the tides, the widest tidal range in continental Europe, with water levels rising as much as 16 meters, made the surrounding flats alternately crossable or lethal. The monks dragged stone and piled it skyward. In the early 13th century, following a fire set during a raid by troops loyal to the French king, a Gothic masterpiece known as La Merveille, the Marble, was constructed, stacking chapels, dormitories, refectory, and cloisters across 3 vertical levels on the north face of the rock. The bay, with its fast tides and sinking sands, made the mount naturally impregnable, and during the 100 Years' War between France and England, which raged between 1337 and 1453, Mont Saint-Michel was one of the very few sites in the region never to fall into English hands. A small garrison held out against repeated sieges, and there is still an English cannonball wedged in one of the abbey's walls, never removed, worn, as one writer put it, like a scar with pride. That military defiance became part of the site's mythology, a place where France held fast when everything else was giving way. By the time of the French Revolution, however, the monastery had fallen into such decline that only 7 monks remained when the abbey was dissolved in the early 1790s. What had once been the spiritual center of the Christian West became a prison. From then until its closure in 1863, some 14,000 prisoners passed through what contemporaries called the Bastille of the Seas, its tides and quicksand rendering escape essentially impossible. Napoleon had extra wooden floors inserted into the monks' high-ceiling refectory to squeeze in more cells. It is one of the more dismal footnotes in the entire saga, a building designed to lift human consciousness towards heaven, subdivided into cages. The abbey was classified as a historic monument in 1874, and restoration work began in earnest that year. The spire that crowns the abbey church today, topped with a gilded statue of St. Michael, was added in 1897, technically a 19th century addition to a medieval building, though so naturally does it rise from the stonework that most visitors assume it was always there. Catholic worship returned to the island in 1922, and in 1966, 1,000 years after Richard I's original charter, the Benedictines came back. A monastic community remains there to this day, holding religious services within the abbey even as the site receives millions of tourists each year. In 1979, Mont Saint-Michel and its bay were inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized for both its extraordinary architecture and its importance as one of Christianity's great pilgrimage destinations. But the inscription also coincided with a growing environmental crisis. Since the 19th century, a causeway built in 1879 to make access easier had gradually been strangling the tidal flows of the bay. Sand was silting up around the base of the rock. Models produced in the late 1990s showed that if nothing were done, Mont Saint-Michel would no longer function as an island by 2040. The place that had defined itself for more than a millennium by its relationship with the sea risked becoming permanently landlocked. A major engineering operation launched in 2006 and completed in 2015 at a cost of approximately 200 million euros set out to reverse that damage. The 19th century causeway was demolished and replaced with a slender footbridge that allows tidal currents to circulate freely around the rock. A new dam with 8 sluice gates was installed on the river to help flush sediment out to sea. The large car park that has sat at the base of the ramparts for over 50 years was dismantled and the land returned to its natural state. According to UNESCO, the maritime character of Mont Saint-Michel was formally re-established on completion of these works in 2015. Visitors now arrive by shuttle from the mainland, on foot across the bridge, or during exceptional tidal coefficients that occur roughly 20 times a year, they watch the sea close in and the mount become once again a true island. This brings us back to this week and to the governance dispute that now commands attention. The site currently receives around 3 million visitors per year, making it the most visited tourist destination in France outside the Paris region. For years, the management of this remarkable footfall has been split between 2 separate bodies, the CMN, which oversees the abbey itself and collects entrance fees, and the Établissement Public National du Mont Saint-Michel, EPMSM, the local public body responsible for the surrounding site, the footbridge, the shuttle transport, and the infrastructure. This arrangement, in theory, allowed national expertise in heritage management to coexist with local stewardship. In practice, the Cour des Comptes, France's supreme audit authority, said in a July 2025 formal question to Parliament that dual management structure was actively harmful, blocking the construction of a coherent tourist and cultural policy, and preventing the necessary reduction of costs at a site where duplications of effort were flagrant. The financial asymmetry is at the heart of the quarrel. According to the same parliamentary report, the CMN generated revenues of 16.5 million euros from the Abbey's ticketing operations, with operational costs of only 3.4 million euros, a net surplus of around 13 million euros, which rose further as tickets were raised from 11 to 16 euros across 2024 and 2025. Meanwhile, the EPMSM received only 675,000 euros per year from the CMN under the terms of the shared convention, when the report suggested it should have been receiving at least 6 million euros to meet its operational needs and finance an investment plan for the site estimated at 38 million euros for the 2026 to 2030 period. Regional elected officials, led by the region's president Hervé Morin, had been pressing the central government for a year to address this imbalance, arguing that revenues generated by Mont Saint-Michel should be reinvested locally to address what they describe as a wall of investments estimated at 60 million euros. This week, the government delivered what the Norman regional officials had been lobbying for. The entire site will now be managed by EPMSM as one single entity. Prime Minister Le Cornu framed the decision on social media as being aimed at better day-to-day management, while promising to preserve the financial balance of the National Monuments Administration Center, CMN. That second part of the pledge was no formality. It is a clause that has sent the CMN trade unions into open revolt. The reason is structural. The CMN is responsible for roughly 85 national monuments across France, from the prehistoric megaliths of Carnac to the chateaux of the Loire Valley. This funding model depends on a solidarity mechanism. High-earning sites subsidize less commercially viable ones. According to the co-general secretary of the union, the Abbey of Mont Saint-Michel is the second largest contributor to that shared pool, generating net benefits of between 6 and 7 million euros annually, trailing only the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. If you strip that contribution away, and the ability of the CMN to keep smaller, less visited monuments open across the territory comes into question. The Secretary General said that you would be carving up the CMN of one of its contributor monuments to the solidarity system that allows 100 monuments across the country to remain open. Union called the decision irresponsible and declared it contrary to the general interest, and called for a strike and rally outside the organization Paris's headquarters the following day. The tension at the heart of the dispute is, in a sense, a timeless argument in France between the centralizing instinct of Paris, and the claims of territory between a national heritage logic and a local investment logic. But it is also a question about what kind of institution should manage places of extraordinary complexity. Mont Saint-Michel is simultaneously a living monastery, a medieval fortress, an ecological restoration project, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and an engine of a regional tourism economy. Whether one body can do all that better than two remains, for now, an open question. Meanwhile, for thousands of years, Mont Saint-Michel has survived the English, the Revolution, Napoleon, and silting, and will, in all probability, survive to this administrative change of tide just as well. Thank you for listening to Le Weekend, your one-stop destination for the main headlines in France. Catch our weekly roundup every weekend wherever you get your podcasts. Stay informed.
Thank you.